Today we're diving deep into a game that made waves for its slick combat, stunning visuals, and, well, let's just say some very distinct character design choices. We're talking about Stellar Blade, the action-adventure title from Shift Up that throws you into a post-apocalyptic Earth overrun by terrifying creatures called the Naytiba. You step into the stylish boots of Eve, a member of an elite airborne squad sent to reclaim our ravaged planet. It's a game that definitely leaves an impression, and today I want to break down what I loved, what left me a little cold, and address the elephant in the room. Alright, let's start with the good stuff, because for fans of challenging action games, Stellar Blade definitely delivers. Right off the bat, the combat has a distinct flavor that will feel familiar to those who've braved the worlds of Dark Souls, Sekiro, or Elden Ring. It's not just about mashing buttons, it's about deliberate, strategic engagement. You really have to learn enemy attack patterns. Each Naytiba, even the seemingly smaller ones, can punish careless aggression with swift and brutal attacks. This focus on enemy telegraphing and precise timing for dodges and parries is a core tenet of the Soulslike experience, and Stellar Blade nails it. Speaking of parrying, the perfect parry mechanic in Stellar Blade feels incredibly satisfying, much like the parry systems in Sekiro or Lies of P. Landing a perfect parry not only negates damage, but often opens enemies up for powerful counterattack, the riposte. It's that risk-reward system that's so characteristic of the genre. You're constantly weighing your options. Do you block, dodge, or try to time that perfect parry for a big payoff? Beyond the defensive mechanics, the punishing nature of death also echoes Souls-like games. While Stellar Blade might not have you losing all your currency upon death in the traditional sense, failing in combat often sends you back to the last camp, the game's equivalent of a bonfire or site of grace, forcing you to retread areas and face enemies again. This creates a real sense of tension and makes each encounter feel significant. You learn from your mistakes, adapt your strategy, and that feeling of finally overcoming a challenging section after multiple attempts is incredibly rewarding. Furthermore, the importance of resource management plays a role. While not as intricate as Souls games, you need to be mindful of your healing items and beta energy. Knowing when to use a potion and when to unleash a powerful skill adds another layer of strategic depth to the combat encounters, forcing you to think beyond just swinging your blade. Finally, the sense of progression and gradual mastery is definitely present. As you defeat enemies and explore, you'll earn experience to upgrade Eve's abilities, unlock new skills, and find new gear that can significantly impact your playstyle. This constant feeling of growth and becoming more powerful while still facing formidable challenges is a key element that Souls fans will find appealing in Stellar Blade. You start out feeling like a nimble survivor, but by the end, you're a force to be reckoned with, earned through perseverance and skill. So while Stellar Blade carves its own identity, the DNA of those challenging and rewarding action RPGs is definitely present in its combat and overall structure. And for fans of that genre, there's a lot to sink your teeth into here. Building on that satisfying combat is the overall flow of the game. I really enjoyed how Stellar Blade blends linear level design with a couple of more open-ended areas. You get that focused narrative-driven experience, for the most part, guiding you through beautifully ruined cities and eerie industrial complexes, but then the game opens up in areas like the Wasteland or the Great Desert, allowing you to explore at your own pace, discover hidden secrets, and tackle optional side quests. It hits that sweet spot where you feel a sense of freedom without being overwhelmed by a massive, bloated open world with endless checklists. It respects your time, and I appreciate that. And speaking of those ruined environments, the setting and world of Stellar Blade are genuinely captivating. There's a haunting beauty to the desolation, with these futuristic structures being reclaimed by nature and infested by grotesque alien life. It creates this really cool juxtaposition that kept me engaged in exploring every nook and cranny. Visually, this game is an absolute stunner. The level of detail in the environments, the lighting effects, and the sheer fidelity of everything on screen is truly impressive. It's a feast for the eyes. Adding to that visual flair are the monster designs. They are genuinely creepy and imaginative. From the smaller, agile Naytiba to the hulking, mutated behemoths, there's a real sense of dread and otherworldliness to their designs. Each enemy type feels distinct and requires a different approach in combat, keeping things fresh and challenging. Finally, for anyone who's played Nier Automata, the influence is undeniable, and nowhere is it more apparent than the music.
It's a bit too far for that. How about you try jumping and dashing?
The soundtrack in Stellar Blade is absolutely phenomenal. It seamlessly blends those melancholic, ethereal melodies with intense adrenaline-pumping tracks during combat. It elevates the atmosphere and emotional impact of the game in a way that's very reminiscent of Yoko Taro's masterpiece. And honestly, it's one of my favorite aspects of the entire experience. The music just rules. While the world of Stellar Blade is visually impressive and ripe for exploration, I found that the narrative, while promising on the surface, ultimately lacked the depth and compelling characters to truly resonate. The initial setup, humanity driven from Earth and Eve's mission to reclaim it, is intriguing. However, as the story unfolds, the plot points felt somewhat predictable, and the twists didn't land with the impact I'd hoped for. The supporting characters, while having their moments, often felt underdeveloped, serving more as plot devices than fully realized individuals I could genuinely care about. Furthermore, the lore and world building, while present, often felt surface level. There are scattered data logs and environmental storytelling elements, but they didn't quite coalesce into a rich and cohesive history that truly drew me in. Compared to games with truly captivating lore, Stellar Blades felt a bit more like set dressing rather than an integral part of the experience. I wanted to feel a deeper connection to the history of this ruined Earth and the mysteries surrounding the Naytiba, but the game didn't quite deliver on that front for me. Along with that, the platforming and sliding and things of that nature in this game could feel a little bit slippery and not quite as tight as I would have liked. This was compounded by occasional inconsistencies in level design. Sometimes the intended path wasn't entirely clear, or the visual cues for where to jump or grapple felt ambiguous. This led to moments of trial and error that felt more frustrating than challenging, breaking the otherwise smooth flow of exploration and combat. It's a shame because the environments themselves are often visually stunning, but navigating them could sometimes feel like a minor obstacle course with slightly imprecise controls. Finally, while the combat system is undoubtedly a highlight, I did find that some enemy types could feel a bit repetitive in their attack patterns after a while. While the boss fights offered significant variety and challenge, some of the more common Naytiba encounters, despite their cool designs, could become somewhat predictable, reducing the sense of urgency and requiring less strategic thinking as you became more familiar with them. A bit more variety or unpredictability in the basic enemy encounters could have kept the moment-to-moment gameplay even more engaging throughout the entire experience. So while Stellar Blade shines in its core combat and visual presentation, some of the narrative elements, world-building depth, and occasional platforming and enemy variety issues held it back from being a truly exceptional experience in my book.
Eve, look up!
Alright, now let's address the cyborg elephant in the room. There's something very, very obvious about Stellar Blade that I haven't explicitly mentioned yet, and that is the character design and the sheer focus on the sexiness of its female characters, particularly the protagonist Eve. Now let me be clear, I have absolutely nothing against beautiful women. I appreciate good character design, and I understand that sex appeal can be a part of that. However, With Stellar Blade, it feels like it's been dialed up to 11 and made a central pillar of the game's identity. From Eve's, let's just say, anatomically improbable physique, to the abundance of revealing outfits and the almost voyeuristic camera angles during certain moments, it feels like the game is actively trying to titillate the player. This isn't inherently a bad thing for everyone, and I'm sure there's an audience that appreciates this aspect. But personally, I felt like it often overshadowed the genuinely good gameplay and interesting world that Stellar Blade has to offer. It got to a point where I felt like I would need to preface showing this game to someone with a disclaimer. And unfortunately, this aspect of the game turned it into ammunition for the ongoing culture war within the video game industry. On one side, you have games like Dragon Age the Veilguard, which have faced criticism for their character designs perceived as less traditionally attractive. Then you have Stellar Blade, which has been held up by those same critics as an example of what a real or good video game should be, often focusing almost exclusively on Eve's idealized figure, the jiggle physics, and the numerous bikini options you can unlock. My issue isn't with the existence of attractive characters in games. My issue is when it feels like the sexualization becomes the primary talking point and potentially detracts from the other merits of the game. I genuinely wish there were more modest outfit options available, and I wish that the collectibles and camera work weren't so heavily focused on objectifying the main character. Part of this is simply my personal taste. I think it crosses a line into cringe territory at times. But more importantly, I think it does a disservice to the solid gameplay and intriguing setting that Stellar Blade offers. It reduces a potentially great game to a talking point in a tiresome online debate, and I think that's a real shame. Despite my reservations about the overtop sexualization, I can't deny that I had a lot of fun playing Stellar Blade. The combat is genuinely engaging and rewarding. The world is visually stunning and atmospheric, and the music is fantastic. It's a mechanically sound action game that has a lot to offer fans of the genre. However, the constant emphasis on Eve's sex appeal often felt unnecessary and detracted from the overall experience for me. I just wish the conversation around this game could focus more on its gameplay and world rather than just its protagonist's assets. But what do you think? Did you play Stellar Blade? What were your impressions? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe for more in-depth looks at action games and Souls-likes and Souls games. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.